G'day and welcome to the Game Day Squad NRL Fantasy Show. I'm Dill, that's Stu, and we are the Fantasy Bros. We are back again, partnering with Game Day Squad to bring you all you need to know to succeed in GDS Rugby League this season. Stu, it is Wednesday, mate, and you know what that means. Teamless Tuesday has dropped, and it's time to take a deep dive into our Round 8 GDS squads. But before we do that, it is finally time we can chat about our squads and some success in Round 7. How did you go, mate?
Yeah, g'day Dill, g'day viewers, g'day listeners. Absolutely, mate. And anyone that was tuning in last week probably would have got some pretty good tips because we both finished pretty high up there on some of those leaderboards. Yeah, second in champ for me. I was sitting nice and pretty up on top with one match to go. I got a little sneaky DM by our good mate Penrith asking if I had any players left. Unfortunately, he did have one player left in that match and he only was behind me by about 24 points. So he did tell me he had Adam Dewey. So I was watching Dewey score pretty closely. It took him to about the 38th or so minute to get past that score. And he eventually topped it. So well done, Penrith. He had a massive week, but you had a pretty big week as well, mate. I saw you on top of that classic leaderboard for quite some time. How'd you end up?
Yeah, mate, well done on the second place. And interesting that Penrith, our good mate, sent you a DM because he also sent me one going into that last match because he was only a few points behind me and asked what rarity my May was going into that last one. I did hold on in Classic and I did top that leaderboard. Finally, I've had a win for the season, so I'm pretty happy with that. And it was that Silver May that actually got me over the line. I think I picked Penrith by about 7 points in the end. So pretty happy with that. Big weekend for us. The other reason is that I also got up in my GDS Cup match. So I am through again into round 5. So I am pretty happy about that. Can't complain when you've got a win in Classic and then a win in GDS Cup. So we are steaming along nice and well.
Flying the flag for the Fantasy Bros in the GDS Cup. I love it, Dill. Well done. G'day, Michael. Michael's joining us once again. He saw the Classic and the Champion leaderboards as well. Thanks very much, mate. Hope we steered you on a couple of good tips there as well. And
definitely.
G'day, Mel. It wouldn't be a Wednesday night Fantasy Bros Game Day Squad show without you being here either. So I hope you went well last week. Thanks for joining us. And everyone else, it's not too late to get started on Game Day Squad. Dill will tell you how shortly, but we're going to come live to you every single Wednesday night. So make sure you subscribe to us via our YouTube channel. That's Fantasy Bros AU, so that you don't miss out on a thing. If first in Classic and second in Champion in the same week isn't enough to get you hooked and get you subscribed, I don't know what will. Each week, we're going to let you know the big important start sits, and we're going to reveal who we're playing in our starter and probably some champion squads as well. So if you can, make sure you follow us on all of our socials to stay up to date. We've dropped a couple of reels of our locks of the week and our point of difference players, and both players scored really nicely last week as well. So we're going to look to continue that run of form over the next couple of weeks, and of course, plenty of chances to win some awesome prizes from us simply by joining us on our show and staying tuned to our socials.
Yep, just two things on that, mate. We're about 17 subscribers away from hitting that 100 over on YouTube. So I think we've got something big in store as a giveaway once we get to 100 subscribers. So make sure you get your friends involved, your family, your dog, whoever you can, so we can get to that 100. And also on Mel, she just joined in before. She's here each and every week. I believe she is overseas at the moment. And I feel like she might be in Europe, I think she said. So the time difference is massive there. So good on her for jumping on. Hopefully she can stick around and we can give her a few tips. And look, as you said, it's definitely not too late to get started in Game Day Squad. Obviously, you've missed the first few rounds, but just like me, you could top the leaderboard in Starter, Classic, Challenger, or Champion, and you can win plenty of prizes, both cash and packs, to help you out. You just need to go and download the app or visit the Game Day Squad website, create your account, use our promo code FBRL25, and you'll be rewarded with 3 9-player common packs just for doing so. A couple of weeks ago, someone opened a common pack and got a Diamond Cleary, which is one of the best cards in the game. So that could be you as well as your first pack opening. That'd be unreal. So why wait? As I said, plenty of cash prizes, plenty of pack prizes as well. Also, when you sign up, heaps of starters, bronze cards to get your starter team sorted, and you can start from there. Look, Stu, do you want to go through what is happening in today's show for those people that are new?
Absolutely, mate. Same as always. I actually messaged you off air last week and I said, I'm pretty excited and confident about my team this week. And feeling's the same this week. I'm really looking forward to talking about some of my players and seeing how I go on the leaderboard this week. So we're going to reveal who we're going to be starting in our starter side, so you guys get a bit of a close look into the players that we're going to roll out there and try to win us some cash and prizes. We'll also, as always, be able to offer you some cards to win as well through the Bro Down Showdown. So if you haven't already participated in that little competition, stay tuned to the end of tonight's episode and see how you can get involved and win some pretty easy and fantastic cards.
Yeah, unreal. And talk about winning. As I mentioned, the round 4 of GDS Cup is complete and the winners have been notified. We've halved the competition down to 32 coaches left. So it's getting pretty close to that pointy end. Remember, you don't need to do anything. Set your starter squad. That is all. You can check out your matchup over on the Game Day Squad Discord. So if you're not there yet, make sure you jump over. There's heaps of things happening over on the Discord. Remember, if you make it all the way through to the end and you are the last coach standing, you will have the 33rd pick in the 2025 GDS Rugby League prize card draft. And you can see on screen, for those watching on YouTube, that we've got Turn and Burn, who had the highest score for the round of 11.52. And then we've got Willow Titans, who was the biggest loser. And surprise, surprise, Willow Titans was actually my opponent. They had the highest score of any losing player, or any losing coach, with 10.95. So I am sorry, Willow Titans, but I do what I've got to do to make sure I can get through that GDS Cup. And just like that, it's really simple. It is all about your head-to-head matchup. You can score some of the highest points across the league and still not win. So it's really important to pick some of the best players. And even still, look, I had a couple of duds. I had Latrell Mitchell, who didn't score overly well. I had James Tedesco, and we spoke about off air as well, how we both were hovering over Dylan Edwards going into that game, thinking we might swap, and we stuck with it. So 2 pretty poor fullback showings, and you can still come out with a win. So it's probably important to note that as well for anyone that, feels like they don't have every card possible, and they might have to play up a few pods.
Just quickly, mate, you can see down there on the prizes down there for round 5. It's a mystery prize. Any ideas? Any thoughts what that might be?
Well, it's got to be better than the 9-player rare pack, but not as good as 2 9-player rare packs.
Well, not as good as 3.
Or 3, sorry. So, yeah, maybe it's 2, but I feel like it could be something more. Maybe it's a Diamond Cleary. Maybe they've got their hands on a few Diamond Clearys and they can give 16 away.
Oh, jealous.
That'd be nice.
And very quickly as well, we had a colleague from work as well. I think Scrambled Legs might be his team name. He's mainly an AFL guy, but he's given Rugby League a go this season. And he's flying. He's right through to round 5 of the GDS Cup today as well. We were in a little meeting this afternoon, and he was running me through his starter side and letting me know who he was playing. His team is stacked. It is quite good. So if you're up against Scrambled Legs, good luck. But hey, Dill, how good would a Quasi's Killers versus Scrambled Legs be in the final? I'd be
in the grand final. I'd love it.
I'd love it.
Maybe we'd have to split the prize card and share it half and half throughout the year. I would love that. Unreal. Alrighty, let's get straight into our teams for round 8. And as always, hookers are a big talking point. Mate, obviously, we talked about Damien Cook last week, and he had a pretty good game. I think my gamble of taking Cook almost paid off big time. He was on about 45 points, I think, just before he got that head knock just before halftime, and he looked probably set for a massive score if he was given 80 minutes. But obviously, that head knock, he went off, didn't impact him too much, but then he did come off with about 20 minutes to go before his final 6 or so minute stint. So I feel like he probably could have gone a lot bigger than he did. Is Cook someone that you're going to stick with now, or are you going to still go back to someone safe like Brayley?
Yeah, mate, I liked what I saw from Cook last week, and that was a really good shout from you. I think I mentioned that's a pretty ballsy play, but something that could pay off, and we could be talking about Cook in a greater capacity this week. And look, here we are. So yeah, I thought he was due a monster 60 plus, but that break certainly did restrict some of that point scoring. But I really liked seeing him out there at the same time as Little. A lot of games already this season, he left the field when Little came on and had a nice big spell then. And that's why his points were sort of capped. But it was really nice to see him on the field in that sort of lock and running role while Little went there at dummy half. And he made a number of runs. And whenever he's running the footy, he's a big chance for some tackle breaks as well. So, yeah, I really like the look from Cook. And there's no reason why he can't play 80 minutes. but it's just not quite there yet. If he puts in another performance like that and shares plenty of minutes there with Little on the field, I certainly think he'll be in my side pretty shortly. I'm super tempted by Reece Robson rather than Blake Brayley this round. It was only 2 weeks ago where we saw Robson just explode and have an absolutely massive score. He scored 69 points, and that was 20 points more than his next biggest score before that. He'd had a really down year before that game, and I think there might have been maybe a voice in his ear saying, look, Reece, that State of Origin jersey could be yours, but look, you need to show me that you got a little bit more to your game than just passing from the ground and tackling for 80 minutes. And he certainly listened, and he brought back his running game. He ran for 135 meters. Before that, his highest was only 65 meters. And he even had a lot of games in the sort of 20 or the 30 run meters as well. So look, the hooker position is so vital when they're running the ball. And if he's going back to that, there's no reason why he can't crack that 50 points a little bit more consistently and be a little bit more threatening than Blake Brayley. We obviously love the tackles that Brayley's making. He's got a try assist or two on the weekend with the big forwards, but, still only scoring those 50 points. So it's Robson for me this week. I hope he's a bit under the radar. The Cowboys had a bye last week. He's only had one good score. But yeah, Cookie, Robson, I think those are the two big ones this week.
And it looks like you love him so much, you've put him twice onto the screen there. So obviously you're pretty keen to play him. Yeah, I like his matchup as well. I guess if we look at Cook and his matchup first, the thing I like is he's another player who's limiting his demerits, which is really important. Similar to Brayley, I guess. A lot of hookers tend to fall off tackles through the middle as they get fatigued, etc. But Cook seems to continue to make his tackles and limit those errors as well, which is awesome to see. He comes up against probably a favourable matchup. I know it probably doesn't sound like a lot, but the Roosters are allowing an average of 35 GDS points to hookers, which has them ranked 6th. That's 2 spots behind the Gold Coast Titans, who Reece Robson comes up against. They average 37.9 GDS points to hookers. So there's not a huge difference, but when you compare that to the rest of the competition, the average for hookers is around 34. So I guess both players have a bit of an opportunity to go above that. But you probably, you're tempering your expectations there for the hooker position. We've talked about it before. There's not a lot out there. You can go with that safe Brayley. Maybe you want to run the risk of Egan again. He looked like he got injured on the weekend, but continued to play. So there's always that risk there as well. So yeah, for me, I'm going to stick with Cook, just the way that he's playing, even without that extra 20 minutes on the field. He still scored well, about a point a minute. So it's just about if we can find another 20 minutes in him, which we've seen already this season, when he did drop back to that lock role while Little went and played hooker. I feel like, Cook could be someone that a lot of people will jump to pretty quickly. So I'd like to stay ahead of the game. And look, if he doesn't come off this week, then so be it. But I feel like they've got a pretty good matchup. And I feel like the Dragons are running pretty high at the moment. And they're pretty keen to put the Roosters to the sword after what the Roosters have sort of thrown up the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, for me, Cook. But then, I think Robson might get a shout somewhere and across maybe the Classic and Challenger sides for sure.
Yeah, nice. I like it. I really look forward to, obviously, that Anzac Day match between the Dragons and the Roosters. That should be a cracker. Just before we jump onto the middles, mate, g'day, JT. Well done. He says he's still alive in the cup.
Yes, he is.
Let's go. That's right. Mate, to answer your question, we're going to talk about the mids now. JT's just asking if we like to run with 2 by mid forwards on the bench as well as on top of our 3 starting mids, as well as the fullback position. So we'll talk about the middles now, Dylan. We've spoken about the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks where we really do like to play those 2 middles, mainly because there's, a really safe floor that we know that there are a number of middle forwards that can pump out some pretty decent minutes. They're tackling, they're running the ball, they're tackle breaking, they're offloading. But we sort of are starting to change our train of thought, or at least I am, and you'll be able to weigh in here shortly as well. But I'm not, JT, looking to load up on 2 middles just for the sake of 2 middles now. I'm starting to find some edge forwards that maybe have a little bit more consistency in terms of some floor, but also much greater ceiling opportunity as well through their attacking stats. And we do have a bit of a cheat code in the edge forward position. That's basically a mid forward anyway. So he's, an edge on the game, but truly a middle on the actual rugby league. So you can take that how you will. But there was 1 week I loaded up with 2 edge forwards on the bench as well. One of them paid off, one didn't. I'm not just going to lock in 2 middles for the sake of it. Dill, are you thinking along the same route?
Yeah, I'm starting to lean that as well. You did talk about even running two edges last week, and that, like you said, paid off. One of them paid off, one of them necessarily didn't. But yeah, I think we looked at the safety of someone like AFB. That's sort of gone away. His consistency it hasn't been that great. He scored a try and still didn't, I think, get over 50 points or so. So that's a little bit concerning. The other one that I liked was Tarpany off his big game a couple of weeks ago, but then he had some limited involvement last week in a pretty big game that the Raiders worked hard to come back in that game against the Titans. So yeah, the consistency from those middles seemed to be disappearing a little bit, but we've obviously got one big player that we're going to potentially add to our middle rotation. I feel like most have or will be looking at it this week, and I think his name's there, and I all weekend was saying all hail the king, because that's I think one of the reasons as well that I made sure I won that classic comp, as I played a silver Max King as well. Oof. So it was a bit of a gamble, but I've just been watching his sort of 50-point consistent middle rotation occurring, and just thought that at least I've got some floor there. I've got some safety. There's not too much ceiling, but damn was I wrong. He dominated that Easter Friday matchup. His first try in NRL, I think he was the longest any player has gone outside of Alex Twal or current players that hadn't scored a try for the number of games that he's played. So I think it was something like 80 or 85. So good on him. On top of that, he also had 200 plus run meters, which is obviously huge. He matches up against the Broncos tomorrow night, and I can't wait to him to steam in up against someone like Haas or Patrick Carrigan as well. And hopefully he continues getting that 60 minutes because he's going to stay in my squad now. Because we've seen that upside with the attack, with the try, with the tackle breaks, etc. So I'm happy to run with King alongside those big three and Haas, May and Yo. And I feel like you're probably thinking something similar.
Yeah, really similar, mate. Just before that, just quickly, Melissa, no, JMK not back this week. Still dealing with that gash to the leg. So they give him another week, I think. And Max Plath has been named there at hooker for the time being. Deal Max King was unbelievable. Yeah, really consistent. Those scores of 50, 59, 52, 53, 54. But then that 87, sort of almost from nowhere. 232 running meters, fantastic. Scored the try, which is excellent. He's obviously pretty damaging close to the line now. They know that they can use him like that. But what I thought was a lot better was his two back-to-back 60-minute matches after having, his minutes sort of all over the place at the start of the season. It looks like he's really sort of solidified and nailed down that 60-minute role. And that's only going to be conducive to a lot of work. And 232 running meters for a middle forward is insane. And I'm not going to say he's going to hit those numbers every single week, but those scores are already pretty good in those mid 50s, but he's shown us what he can do in terms of some upside there as well. So yeah, he'll be my bench middle alongside obviously those three standouts in Haas, May and Yo. There's still sets and forgets until, sort of the origin period rolls around. The big questions are going to be if they are named after a state of origin match, if we are going to roll them on into our teams, at the expense, the likelihood of maybe some reduced minutes or, being named on the interchange bench. That's when it's going to be pretty dicey, I think. But for now, pretty simple names just to lock in there as well. So if you don't yet own yourself a Haas, a May or an Isaiah Yo card, you've got to get yourself over to that transfer market or jump on the GDS Discord. And there's plenty of players there that have a heap of them in spare, and they might be able to trade you for something that they're chasing as well. So I don't think we need to talk about those three a lot. Hey, Dill, it's getting pretty boring mentioning those three names. It's always sort of that fourth or fifth player that sort of brings about the most talking point.
And if someone does want to take a risk and run your fifth middle and you're not sure, Udo Ikamanu has a pretty decent matchup. Now, his minutes aren't great, so his minutes are down this season. He's averaging about 43 or so minutes per game, which is a lot less than he was at the Tigers. But he comes up against the Rabbits that have allowed 43 GDS points on average to all middle forwards this season, which is about 7 or 8 points more than any other side across the competition. So that's a lot higher than the middle average. So if he can sort of find a few more minutes there, it might just be a watch this week and see how he goes up against a weakened Bunny side. But he might be someone that you might want to take a risk on that might have some upside, and you just don't want to be boring and you want to try and find a potential point of difference. Maybe that's someone you can look at as well. But yeah, for me, I think those sort of three, the big three, we'll call them, and then add Maxi King in there as well as our fourth. And look, just a couple of comments before we move on. Look, my mate Kyle is here. G'day, Kyle. Warriors on top. That is my man. And then also we've got Jay Boney in again. He started out last week. Look, he is new to Game Day Squad. So, mate, in Game Day Squad, there are no captains. But if I was a betting man and I needed to play a captain in one of my fantasy competitions, I would put the captaincy on May as well. I think he's going to have a big week this week. And I feel like Haas probably's got a little bit too much to do up against the doggies that are flying high. Their defense is unreal at the moment. And I'm sure you'd probably agree, Stu. All right, let's jump into our edges. And this is where it gets very interesting. I've got 4 players that I have no idea where I'm going with at the moment. So do you want to kick us off with a couple of players that you're running and then try and convince me to see what I can get as my second and third?
All right, let's see how we go. Look, mate, Toby Couchman seems to be the flavour of the GDS forum at the moment. And for good reason. He's been in fantastic form as well. And we know there aren't too many bronze cards of Toby Couchman floating around. So there's a lot of people trying to get their hands on him to plug them into their starter or their GDS Cup teams. There's obviously not too many diamond cards around either as well, since he was only a new addition to the game this year. But, he's someone that's absolutely taken fantasy by storm this season. He was a really low minute interchange forward last year, and he's just developed into this state of origin bolter or serious contender. And it certainly wouldn't surprise me, maybe not this year, but certainly in the next year or two, that he's in that sky blue. But mate, he made 56 tackles last match and he only missed the one. So that tackle efficiency is incredible. We talk about the demerits that really hinder a lot of fantasy players' performances, and he's not getting very many whatsoever. In those 66 minutes, he also ran for 151 meters. That included a really nice line break where he sort of shifted off the pass and just managed to get outside of those tired middle forwards. And he sprinted downfield by about 40 or 50 meters and took the fullback on and looked like he could have almost scored there as well. So he runs really nice lines through the middle there. So that just adds another dimension to that Dragons attack, and they're not afraid to use him. What I love to see when he's got the footy in his arm is he's always looking to promote it and offload it as well. And those extra points through offloads are fantastic as well. He's not just that meat and potatoes middle forward. No. He's got plenty of upside, and he can be played in the edge position as well, which I think is a little bit of a cheat code. So JT, that's definitely going to be a reason why I play at least 3, maybe even 4 edges this week. So Dill, I hope you've got a couple of Couchman cards. I think hopefully I've convinced you to start him, but a couple of other names I'll mention, and then you can tell me if you're starting any of these or you want a bit more information about them. But for me, it's going to be Preston tomorrow night there against the Dogs. We've seen them in a lot of form across the park, and they're moving the ball left a lot. That's obviously their go-to side for the attack. And with Burton and Kickow back now, they're obviously getting lots of touches. Yeah. But when the play breaks down there on the left, there's a really nice shift back to the right where, Tracy, where Sexton, and then even Burton is sweeping around at times as well. And that right side can be just as damaging as well. So the Broncos, are down on a couple of troops. They're licking their wounds, their confidence down a little bit. The Bulldogs are flying high. I can see Preston, even if he just gets through his normal workload, it's not going to be a poor score. And he's definitely got some attacking upside here. I do like Hutto Young. He's coming off 3 doubles in a row. The man is absolutely on fire. You'd be tempted to start him again after those 6 tries in 3 matches. Can the run continue? I don't know. There's probably some hesitation for me to start him in my side this week, knowing that there's got to be a down point somewhere. But he's just in some red hot form, and he's running over the top of blokes from 10 meters out and carrying 3 over the try line and scoring tries. We love to see it, particularly as a Raiders man. So in summary, Toby Couchman is a lock. Jacob Preston, Hutto Young is probably a bit of maybe a slightly ahead of Dylan Lucas returning from a hammy. And I think you're pretty keen on Lucas. So why Lucas over Hudson Young?
Well, you covered 2 of the players that I had. So the 4 players that I was, obviously Couchman's a set and forget. You said last week on one of the reels that he was your pod of the week. And look, that's for really good reason. I think he moves into lock of the week range for most people now. look, as you talked about, the price on his on any rarity of his card is massive, but particularly his diamond at the moment as well. Michael Cozzy here said he finally got his hands on a Couchman and he's never leaving his team. I love that. That is unreal. Good stuff. For me, the other four, was Preston, Lucas, and Young, with a side potentially of Fafita, depending on what happens. He's been named on the bench and who knows what's going to happen there. But it's probably the toss-up. I need two positions from probably those three players, Preston, Lucas, and Young. I really like Preston. I think he's going to also be a lock in my team. We've seen how dangerous he and Carraz have been down that right side, as you said. And look, the Broncos are pretty even in terms of defending both sides of the field. They're letting in about 30 plus points on both sides of the field. So there's no sort of advantage either side there. But I think the big one that you touched on is that big change for the Broncos, where Cobbo's moving from the one of the edges to the fullback position. So how does that change their defensive pattern, etc.? I'm not sure yet, but I feel like Preston might be a beneficiary along with Carraz potentially down that right side. So I'm pretty happy to go with Preston. And just on Young, look, obviously he scored 7 tries this season, 6 of them in the last 3 games. You take out those 7, he's averaging 64 points as well. But you take out those 7 tries, and his average is still in the mid-50s. So it's not like he's a slouch outside of not scoring attacking points. And I feel like this Raiders, they just got points in them. They can just score from anywhere on the field. And they come up against the Finns, who also can do that, but they also let in a lot of points. The line at the moment, the bookies have set at 50. So I feel like they could exceed that quite easily with the way both teams are playing. Look, if the Raiders score points, it has to be through Hudson Young again, whether it's him getting over the line or him giving a late offload for a try assist. And I feel like that could be the way to go. I love Dylan Lucas and I love everything that he's done. Obviously, returns from injury could be a bit dicey. He's also heading over to Christchurch for the Anzac Day game against the Warriors, which is going to be a massive game. Lucas, he's played only the 2 games, but he's averaging 66 across those 2 games. Does include 1 try. So again, you take that out, he's still averaging close to 60 points. And he's so dangerous on that left side with the likes of Ponga, Sharp, Marju, Best. Look, that Knights team, when they're on fire, they are unreal. And you look at what they did in the first 2 weeks, then Lucas gets injured and they haven't really found their form. So I feel like maybe he's the missing link. Maybe he's the reason that, they're not playing as well as they could be. And we've talked about it a few times in the last couple of weeks. The Warriors are vulnerable down that side as well, allowing an average of 52 GDS points to left edges. So I really like Lucas. I know that the scary part is the return from the hammy, and it's probably a couple of weeks early potentially than what was first projected. So I feel like there's merit in that as well, that they must feel confident in him if they've brought him back a couple of weeks earlier than predicted. I don't think I've made it easy for myself at all. I think it'll be a last minute decision between Lucas and Young. But the other looming one is David Fafita. He got ruled out late last week with a hammy injury, and we thought, well, there goes a month or 6 weeks worth of David Fafita, just as he's found some form, just as he looks at his most dangerous. And then, surprise, surprise, his name has popped up again on the reserves on the bench. So I'm always keen to run one of my favourite players out, and that Big Dave Fafita. And look, if he's starting, and I know that he's got some security around his minutes, I think he's a must play every week. The scary part is that you just don't know if he comes off the bench, is he going to have 15 or 20 minutes like he did that first game, or is he going to play 74 minutes like he's done in the past? I'm not sure. If his name comes into the side, I think I might play him over probably Hudson Young.
Yeah, those flexible coaches that moved him into their starting lineup sort of 2 weeks ago when he was named on the bench and then was named in the starting side, and he had his breakout game of the season. Those coaches were certainly rewarded by that. So it's important to stay flexible with your game day squad teams and keep an ear out for that late mail and see where these players are lining up, and if they are coming off the bench and that sort of thing. That's a good way to get a jump on some of your opponents as well. But too many question marks around Fafita. I'm shocked that he's been named, to be honest, and he can't be 100% regardless of if he takes the field or not. So yeah, with so many other good options and good matchups for some of these players as well, I don't think we need to sort of outthink the room and whack him into the side. If he does get named in that starting team, he might be great. He might, have reduced minutes. He might redo that injury pretty quickly. Just like Dylan Lucas, I know that hamstrings, they're most likely to be re-injured within that first 2 weeks. So for me, Dylan Lucas is probably a bit of a watch, between the fingers over the eyes sort of thing. I don't think he'll ruin my week if I don't start him, but it's probably just a bit too much doubt. And the player that I play instead of him, it probably isn't going to cost me too many points after all. JT here is asking us about his main man, Dylan Egan, as a big Dragons fan. Mate, the issue with Dylan Egan is the number he's wearing on his back. It's probably more of a psychological, issue for me, seeing the 17 on his back. Does he not fit the number 11 jersey or something? Come on, we know he's going to be named in that starting team an hour out from kickoff. But yeah, it's just the fact that he keeps getting named in the 17. Look, if he finally gets named in the 11 and he continues to pump out 80 minutes with some really nice base, particularly during the Origin period when a lot of our guns are out, I think he might be a name that comes into consideration, if not certainly in the years to come. So anyone in the comments section here, anyone listening in, make sure you get your hands on some Dylan Egan cards before he becomes the next big thing in a couple of years. So you got a nice player there, JT, down there at the Dragons.
Yeah, love it. And Sif Kanga is kind of agreeing with me, kind of not. I'm not sure. Lucas could make it in my team this week, but not confident with the hammy. So, yeah, I'm not sure there. That hasn't helped me at all, Sif Kanga. So that is all right.
How are the splinters, mate? Get off the fence, Sif Kanga.
We will push through. All right, let's move on to a pretty boring position, I think. We've sort of turned it into the halves. I think there's not a lot to be said, really. Nathan Cleary, Nicho Hynes, and Jamel Fogarty, I think, are the names on most people's lips, on most coaches' lips. And I think for good reason. Look, we've seen Campbell now ruled out for the next couple of months at least. And there's not a whole lot outside of those three names. We've got a few players there, but do you want to talk through why, those three you're just going to stick and sort of set and forget?
Oh, mate, if you want, we can move on to centers. I think we've said enough. Yeah, look, those three are pretty easy plays. I think Campbell maybe at least a month, hopefully not too much longer. But he was certainly looking, at the top of the averages lists for the halves. He was in red hot form, so hopefully he can return soon enough and get back to those big numbers. But yeah, it leaves it pretty boring for those three big names. They're obviously pumping out some pretty decent scores. They're obviously very safe as well through their kicking yards. They also kick goals for their team, and they make plenty of tackles there on the edge of the field as well, and their efficiency and that sort of thing are pretty good as well. They're also mostly the dominant ball players in their team, although Hynes probably stands at that first receiver a little bit too often. We saw 2 weeks ago where he had a better game, at least through the eye test. He was playing at second receiver a lot more and having his fingerprints on some better attacking opportunities. But he just seems to swap that role with Trindle way too much, and it's really frustrating. He's capable of those big 70 or 80 point games like we saw Cleary get, but it'll happen eventually. You've stuck by him for the last month or so there's no reason to jump off him now. The other names there aren't screaming out that they need to be selected. So even if a Munster or a Hughes or a Cherry Evans, have a nice big outing, it's not like they're going to ruin your week if you start, a Hynes or a Fogarty over them. So it's safety, but it's also, plenty of upside as well. I think Jamal Fogarty might kick for more than 1,000 meters in one match this season. That's my red hot take. I would love to see it.
I like that. Just on, you mentioned Munster there. He's probably the pod that I would look to go with if I wanted to jump off maybe Hynes or Fogarty. I think Cleary's just a set and forget. We saw him just accumulate points out of nothing last week and just get to that ton or close to it pretty easily. So, for me, if I'm going to go somewhere else, I might look at Munster. They're up against the Bunnies, and That matchup there, obviously the Storm want to avenge that performance against the Finns last week. I couldn't believe what I was watching. And look, Munster's probably got the juiciest matchup out of all the Storm players, up on the left side against a vulnerable right side defence from the Rabbitohs. They've allowed left side halves an average of 57 GDS points. So that has them ranked first for points allowed to left side halves. There's always some risk with Munster though. Look, he's got a high of 55 and a low of 21. So if you're one of those risky game day squad players and you're keen to look for a pod, maybe Munster's your bet, where he's got some upside there against a pretty weak Bunnies defence. So yeah, for those three for me, and then maybe a pod in Munster. Although just looking at the comments there, Sif Kanga, Cleary, Fogs, and going to go with the pod. No names, but after all the drama with him coming back from his first game from New South Wales Cup, hoping he's coming out to prove a point. Any guesses to who he could be talking about?
Does it rhyme with Talbot by any chance?
Mate, that would be a massive call if he came back and tonned up in his first game back from New South Wales Cup after everything that's happened and just say, hey, give me more than $6 million over 5 years, please.
That would be peak rugby league if he did so. And Sif Kanga will be here next week laughing his head off, going, I told you, boys. I hinted towards it and no one followed me.
How about Sif in the comments, give us a number. What number does Galvin have to get over this week? And if he does, we will give you a 3-player rare pack. Give us a decent number. It's got to be a good number.
We have to agree with it.
It has to be a good number. So, Sif, keep it there, mate. Have a think. What's the number that you think Galvin needs to get to? Alrighty, while he's doing that, let's move on to the centres and we'll see if Sif Kanga can come up with a number for us. Alrighty, the centres. Pretty stock standard, those names on the list, except for one there, mate. And do you want to talk about Nick Meaney, who looks to be making his way into your side?
Yeah, he might. I'll probably, be a little bit nervous and change him out at the last minute sort of thing. But it's probably just all around the question marks over who's going to be kicking goals. I presume it will be Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm, but if it is Nick Meaney, and we know that Meaney had been kicking over Pappy, obviously Pappy had that, that long return from injury, and then he was sort of, rehabbed and looked after coming back into the game. But, even this season, they both started, pretty injury-free in terms of Pappy's health, and Meaney still had the kicking duties in those first 2 matches before suffering that facial fracture. If we look at Pappy's kicking percentage, it's 80% so far this season and 77%, I think, for his career. Nick Meaney is slightly below him by 2 or 3% in both of those categories. So it's really, no big difference. Yeah. So I presume Pappy will just hang on to the kicking duties, which would probably mean that I'd move away from Nick Meaney, but there's always that chance that he does. So I think I'll be paying some really close attention to the pre-game warm-up, and I might even see if I can get some spies down there at that game, and so they can hopefully spot early who is doing all the warm-ups with the tee. Because look, if Nick Meaney is doing it, there's a real chance that he could have 15, 18, 21 points just from the boot, which would just be unreal in that center position. He's coming back from that facial injury, so it's not like a long-term soft tissue injury, which would turn me off him for sure. It's that facial injury, so that it should be nice and healed, and he should be fairly confident to get back in amongst some footy. And they've got a great matchup, the Storm do, and if he's kicking goals over all day long, there's no reason why he can't put on a pretty big score. So he's my big maybe at the moment. I feel like I'm going to chicken out of it. I'll tell you that now, but yeah, he's tempting me at the moment, and I don't think too many will play him. Let's hope anyway. But the other interesting name there on the list is probably Selwyn Cobbo. Is there a chance that he might find his way into your lineup?
Look, I don't think so this week. Obviously, the injury to Reece Walsh is significant. Cobbo moves to the fullback position for the Broncos. He hasn't really had a great start this season in Cobbo. He's only averaging 32.5 GDS points. However, I think, look, I will keep an eye on him. I won't be playing him this week. They're up against the Dogs, obviously. Massive defensive effort from the Dogs for the last few weeks, or pretty much the start of the season. They're restricting opposition fullbacks to only 29 GDS points, which is one of the lowest across the competition this season. So maybe it's a look this week, and maybe look to play him against Penrith. I know that sounds crazy, but they're still giving up 50 plus to fullbacks on average, or then the week after the Rabbitohs, who, look, I'll give a little spoiler away, they're giving up the most points to fullbacks this season. So maybe it's a target him in 2 weeks' time. So if you don't yet have a Cobbo, maybe it's try and get a Cobbo on the marketplace for a couple of weeks' time. Last year, we saw Cobbo play one game at fullback against Manly. He scored 58 fantasy points. So he's there in the ballpark for, a decent game. And it's just about watching, I guess, what he does off the ball and then on the ball as well, and where he's going to pop up and how he's going to support the rest of the team there and what that looks like. So, yeah, it'll be a watch this week and then maybe a play in the following weeks. I think there's one player on that list that we're both going to play, though, and that's the ever-reliable Herbie Farnworth. I think he's a set-and-forget centre now. He sits behind Iro when sorting by averages in the centre position, but we know Farnworth has a much larger sample size compared to Iro, who's only had the 2 games. Farnworth is averaging 61 points. He's had a couple of 70-plus games, and his floor looks to be around 50. So if you're getting 50 points out of a centre each and every week, I think you've got to be pretty happy with that, when a lot of centres are averaging like around that 32-odd that Cobbo is. So I'm pretty happy to run Farnworth, and that looks like you're going to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. If you want any proof that he's, fixture proof, you only need to watch that Storm game and, see how dominant he was against, a team that's regarded as one of the best defensive teams in the comp, and probably behind only the Bulldogs, and, just as good as maybe Penrith were last year. But, the Dolphins were outstanding, obviously off the back of Isaiah Katoa, but we could just see what Farnworth can do when he gets, even just a little bit of space. He can step off both feet, he can offload in the tackle, and he can accelerate between guys really quickly as well. So he's absolutely fixture proof regardless of the opposition, and it just makes it even better to play him when he comes up against a pretty soft opponent. And we saw last week Brian Kelly was pretty dominant there against Matt Timoko. Probably had one of his worst performances in Raiders colours, particularly from a defensive point of view. But Brian Kelly on the left-hand side there of the Titans defence sort of carved him up, at least for that first 40 minutes. And no disrespect to Brian Kelly, but Herbie Farnworth is a much better player in a lot better form, and I think he's going to cause a lot of trouble there for the Raiders right edge. They've obviously got Fogarty there as well, who's capable, but he's a little bit slower as well, and his lateral movement isn't fantastic. So if Herbie steps in off that left foot, probably see Fogarty sort of clutching at his shoulder or his jersey and falling off him and splitting through the line there. So absolute fixture proof. He'll only probably not be in my team if he's injured or the Dolphins have a bye.
Yep, 100%. And look, he's only one tackle break away from hitting the 50 mark for the season so far. That has them ranked as the best tackle breaker in the competition at the moment across every position. So tackle breaks obviously worth 3 points in Game Day squad, so that is massive. So we want to see him at least reach 60. This week, that would be unreal. All right, Sif Kanger has got back to us before we jump into the final centre that I'm going to play, and he has set the line for 70. Are we happy with that? Right. So if he goes above 70.
Okay. I've just had a quick look through Lachlan Galvin's stats this year. He hasn't surpassed 70. In fact, he's only gone above 60 once, and that was in round 2 thanks to a try. He still gets over 30, and he's got a couple of 40s and 50s as well. So I reckon... yeah, Sif's definitely talked him into having a big game, but I reckon we can safely bump that line down to 60, particularly when he's only averaging 46 and he's only gone over 61. So I'm happy to bring it down to 60 if you are, Dill.
Yeah. If Sif's happy for that,
how's
60
that sound,
points.
Sif?
And if Galvin goes above 60, we will shout you a 3-player rare pack. I think that's a pretty good deal for Sif Kanger there. I love it. Let us know, mate, if you are keen for that. Melissa, look, yeah, you are 100% correct. Even if Herbie has the
Oh,
bye,
that's
he'll
great.
still score more than Walsh is negative. That is correct. But we're pretty happy with Farnworth. The last centre for me is quite tough. I like the Nick Meaney call. I'm just, again, wary of always loading up on a bunch of players from one team in what we think is a soft matchup, and it doesn't necessarily turn out that way. Just looking at some other options, we've got Garrick up against the Panthers. The Panthers allow 55 GDS points to right centres versus 59 on the left. So they're pretty open on both sides. Obviously, the Panthers are probably back to their best. I don't know. One game against, I don't
who
know.
knows?
But Turbo's back as well. Does that make a difference for the Sea Eagles in their go forward? We've talked about that quite a bit. So Garrick potentially an option there. Meaney against the Rabbits, as you said. The Rabbits allow 32 GDS points to right centres and 56 to the left. But again, Rabbitohs love to give up points. Meaney's averaging 52 points in his first 2 games. So that's definitely a shout there. Valentine Holmes, who we've been on a few times over the last few weeks, they are up against the Roosters. They only allow 28 points to left centres versus 40 points to the right. So I'm a bit wary on Holmes, and obviously the demerits from Holmes. He's back into his old ways of missing tackles and errors and brain farts, etc. So yeah, for me, probably not Holmes. The one I have landed on at the moment is Bradman Best up against the Warriors. And I feel like maybe I'm targeting this game too much as well. Obviously, the Warriors put on a pretty good performance against the Broncos last week, where I had pretty much written them off early on. They looked all gone straight in. That first try there for Billy Walters cutting straight through them at the line. And then the Warriors fought back, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing until about 15 to go when the Warriors went back to their old ways and said, no, we've had enough. We're not playing anymore. But I think I'm going to target a couple of Knights players up against the Warriors. The Warriors allow an average of 56.3 to left centres, excuse me, versus only 40 to the right. So I think Best has got a really good opportunity there. Obviously, we've talked about the gang getting back together, so to say, in the Knights, and hopefully that makes a difference. Best is averaging 52 points across 6 games with only 2 tries and 1 try assist. So he's got some really good floor there. And even on some of his down games, it's still a pretty decent score that I'd be happy to, again, take away with from that centre position when we know that the centre position, again, another volatile position, and the average across all centres is only around 35. So I'd be happy with 50 plus from either of my centres, I think.
Would you be happy to know that there are showers predicted for Auckland on Friday?
Well, they're not playing in Auckland. They're playing in Christchurch. So hopefully those showers stay in Auckland.
Right. No, I was just saying that they're probably going to make their way to Christchurch.
Yeah. Maybe. If there's showers, I don't know if it matters too much. We talked last year quite a bit, between each other about the potential for weather to impact the game significantly. And I don't have any stats to back it up. That's something that I would really like to do.
I'm cutting you off there, Dill. Perfect weather for Friday. We don't even have to worry about any weather in Christchurch.
Unreal. Yeah, they've moved the game down there to Christchurch, which is awesome for everyone down there. We know how Christchurch tend to do it quite tough down there with the earthquakes, etc., and everything else that's going on down there. So it'll be a great day out for them, particularly for Anzac Day. And look, a little spoiler as well, we will be talking a little bit about Anzac Day a little bit more later on. So keep your ears peeled for that. Okay. Alrighty, I think I'm going to go with Best. I think after all of that, I've decided Farnworth and Best, and then maybe throw in a Nick Meaney and a couple of other sides just to hedge my bets a little bit. So hopefully we've helped you out a little bit there with some stats around the centres. Is there anything else you want to say on any of those centres, mate?
No, mate. Yeah, I like the Best shout. He might find his way into my side for a late Meaney replacement if I end up going down that route. So let me get this straight. You've got Bradman Best. You got Dylan Lucas. How many more Knights players are you going to jam into that team? And not just Knights players necessarily, but Knights left edge players. Talk to me. Who are you playing in your wings?
Yeah. I'm also going Fletcher Sharp. I don't know.
Not Greg Marju as well?
No, I'm not going Greg Marju, although he was another big reason why I got up in that classic competition. So I might just have to hedge him and just throw him into maybe my classic and challenger again. I still think we continue to talk about Fletcher Sharp and compared to Greg Marshall. And I still think Fletcher's got that better floor, a lot safer floor than someone like Greg Marshall does. We look at the stats. Marshall might be the play, though. The Warriors have allowed an average of 56 GDS points to left side centers, left side wingers. So I just, there's just that opportunity there where, I don't know, there could be a bit of a play for that left side. Look, the other interesting thing is that the Warriors tend to restrict right side halves to 41 points. So that, that sort of right side gets shut down a little bit more than that left side. So yeah, the Warriors obviously are a little bit different over the last couple of games, but even the last 3 or 4 games, the left side seems to, in attack against the Warriors, seem to a little bit better. So yeah, I'm a little bit nervous about fielding so many Knights, particularly when they aren't playing well. But I don't know. I've got this feeling about the Warriors that they never seem to step up on Anzac Day like they should. So I don't know.
Yeah, but that's because they normally play the Storm, and the Storm normally put 40 or 50 on them. So they've got some better, maybe a bit better scheduling this year, getting that home game there against a team that's not the Storm. But I think Melissa's onto something here. She says Dill's just fielding the Knights this week. Let's be real. And Melissa, I think we both know why. Look, Dill's not just a pretty face; he's a pretty smart man as well. Obviously, being a Warriors fan, he can hedge his bets here. If he loads up on the Knights players and the Knights put the cleaners through the Warriors, he's a happy man. If the Warriors go well and get the win, he's a very passionate Warriors fan, so he'll be just as happy that his boys get up, and there's probably still a chance some of those Knights go well too. So there's probably not going to be too many tears coming out of that lounge room when Dill's watching that match, and in the best of both worlds, he could see a Warriors win and a nail biter, but plenty of points there for the Knights left edge. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be an unreal way to finish or work through the Anzac Day triple header, I believe, on Anzac Day as well. So yeah, that should be good. Look, the other winger that we're both, I think, pretty keen on is Jacob Kiraz. He's come back from injury and he's just hit the ground running. He's playing some of his best footy, and it's pretty easy to just sort of pick him and know that what you're going to get from him. The concern potentially is him matching up the Broncos, but like we said, there's a lot of changes happening there. The Broncos are pretty good at limiting right centres, opposition right side centres, an average of only 32 GDS points. So that's almost the lowest in the comp. I think the second or third lowest. But it's hard to go past him. Kiraz, like I said, almost 60 points last week without a try. He had over 200 run meters, 5 tackle breaks, and 4 offloads. So it's obviously all about his base and his power that we're getting those points from. So I'm pretty happy to run with Jacob Kiraz, and then Fletcher Sharp as my third Knights player. But maybe I might think about changing one or two of those maybe on Friday before the game kicks off.
Yeah, there aren't too many players aren't too many wingers in the league like Jacob Kiraz. His work from his own end is fantastic, and he's definitely looking to promote that footy with an offload, really close to his try line. And he's obviously, got the license to do that, and it's pretty fruitful for the team, but also for his fantasy scoring as well. So he breaks tackles for fun. He does plenty of work through the middle, and whenever he's running through the middle at some of those tired forwards, he's always a chance of, getting through himself or bumping off a couple for a tackle break and an offload out the back. And the Dogs are on fire. They're leading the comp because they're the best team in the comp at the moment.
Yeah.
They're damaging down the left-hand side, but if they don't score down the left, they then shift the ball to the right. And, he's every chance to get on the end of a nice little backline shift there as well. So, yeah, pretty confident play Kiraz because of the safe floor. It's probably about how many squads you want to put Marju in, because we know that he's, got some pretty big downside as well. He's got scores of, 34, 39 and 18 before that massive, 102 points. So, that almost came from nowhere if you look at his 3 previous scores, and he's had some really low scores. So 16 tackle breaks is incredible. That's almost 50 points just from tackle breaks alone. Some wingers in this competition aren't even getting close to 50 points, and they're playing for 80 minutes, and he's doing that just through tackle breaks. So it's someone you can't ignore, but we know that he's got a pretty low floor there as well. If if he's making a few errors under the high ball, or he drops one or two coming out of his own end, he seems to go into his shell, and he doesn't seem to get back into the game at all. So he's a really confidence player. If he starts the game well, he's every chance to go on with it and bust plenty of tackles and crush over as well. He's probably not someone I can be confident in to start in all 4 comps, but there'll be a sprinkle of Marju around some Karaz. But I don't think you can go wrong with those 3. It will probably be who you want to go as a pod and who's going to be risky enough to go outside of one of those 3 players and look to be a point of difference somewhere else. I don't think the other options are that tantalising. Sif Kanga has suggested maybe Hopewadi. Look, he definitely probably would have been in contention if he was still in that fullback jersey. We saw he absolutely tore the Dragons to shreds last week playing at fullback, which is fantastic. Obviously, Tommy's back now, which means Hopewadi moves back to that left wing, and we know the left wing is pretty good for when you're playing in the Manly side. But we don't know how good Tommy is returning to the game. Yeah, he's every chance of playing really well and lighting up that left side of the field. He's been a bit more right side dominant this season in his the few games that he has played. But I guess there's also the likelihood of if he goes down, then Hopewadi does slot into fullback there. So decent little shout there, Sif Kanga. I like it. But definitely when he's got the number 1 on his back, he's a far more enticing play on the wing for me.
Yeah, and just quickly, the males come through for the Broncos Bulldogs side. Jordan Ricky has been ruled out, and Piakura has come into the starting side. So I don't know if that makes a difference in terms of some of the Bulldogs players that people might want to target, but I think that's a pretty big out for the Broncos as well. And for a young bloke in Piakura coming in who, probably hasn't done a lot of training in the starting squad necessarily. So that, again, might be an option there for you to target, maybe moving forward into that Broncos-Bulldogs game. All right, for me, I think Fletcher Sharp's an easy one. Marju, sprinkle across. Look, JT's brought up a good point as well, just back to Bradman Best. Rocco Berry comes back in for the Warriors. He came back in last week as well. He is a very good defender. He is picked purely based on his defensive work. He is the son of an All Black, so he knows how to tackle properly. And it's a bit nervous about him lining up against Best. That is correct. And I guess that'll be probably something we'll keep a close eye on leading into that game, as well as if there's any late mail, any changes leading into that game. All right, let's jump to our fullbacks now. And again, another position where we've pretty much gone for the same 3 players, although you have someone potentially that you might be looking at that's a little bit different. So do you want to talk through that player first, and then we'll bounce back and forward for the 3 that we're going to play?
Yeah, that player is Scotty Drinkwater. He's got a really nice matchup here against the Titans. The Cowboys are obviously in some serious form of late, and he's usually involved in those try assists, finding the try line himself, obviously breaking tackles, but also kicking goals again this year. So he's actually been really consistent this season so far in GameDay squad without really having a monster game yet, but it's probably not too far away. Cowboys are obviously coming, off a freshener, and it should be nice and fresh now. And they've probably, looked at some of their attacking structure close to the line and found some ways to get him a little bit more involved as well. And I think he's really going to benefit from that by coming into this match up with fresh legs. And he's someone I'm certainly considering with that really nice matchup there this weekend. He's definitely going to come in as a pretty big point of difference, given that we've got the likes of Teddy, Pappy, and Dylan Edwards that I presume are going to be pretty well played across most comps. But I think Scott Drinkwater will find his way into at least 1 or 2 of my squads, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the top scoring fullbacks this week. But I just want to see a little bit more from the Cowboys as a whole. They've shown glimpses, maybe not yet for 80 minutes. If they are putting together an 80-minute performance, he's going to be a big benefactor of that, and I think he's going to go well this week. And maybe even Jeremiah Nanai getting a start there as well. It could be the time that the Cowboys start finding a bit of rhythm, a bit of form, and Scotty Drinkwater will be a big reason for that.
Yeah, I love it. And we talked about him a couple of weeks ago, and it probably didn't come off as we expected. But I think, he's definitely got some form, and we've definitely seen it in the past where he gets 2 or 3 try assists and maybe even a try himself. And we're laughing looking at a 70 70 plus for Scotty Drinkwater. So I think that's definitely a potential pod, and I like it. Look, there are, like we said, probably three big names there in James Tedesco, Ryan Pappenhausen, and Dylan Edwards. I think Dylan Edwards probably is a not a contentious call. It's probably a smart point of difference potentially. I guess it just depends on if you think that the Panthers are back or not. Is probably the big one. He obviously had a great game last week, and the Panthers looked like they played really well last week, scoring 40 points up against the Roosters, and Edwards had quite a big part in that. So, we take out his try assists. He still ran over 200 meters and had 9 tackle breaks. So it was back to sort of the Dylan Edwards of old, wasn't it? That that we got used to last season. We're happy to play and know that he was going to get all those run meters. So we probably expect more of the same against the Seagulls as well. They've allowed an average of 40 GDS points to fullbacks this season. Has them a little bit in the middle of the pack, so there's some defensive opportunities there for the Seagulls up against the Panthers. But I just think Dylan Edwards, I think we've got to play him. I just think he's too good not to have in our sides, and we know what he does when he's on fire. Look, the other thing, Will Kennedy did score 50 points a couple of weeks ago against the Seagulls. So if Will Kennedy can score 50, then Dylan Edwards, who's the New South Wales fullback, surely has a lot more points in him.
Yeah, Edwards certainly got the points over Teddy last week, didn't he? I just can't get the Edwards play right. I remember playing him back in round 2 against the Roosters there. Everyone expected, the Roosters to continue their poor run of form. They got smashed against the Bronx in round 1. Penrith were great in Vegas, but that's when it all went downhill. I played Edwards in that match. He only lasted 59 minutes. He scored, a really low 30. He did that injury. He then came back in round 6 with a pretty nice matchup against the Dolphins, or so I thought, and it was a bit underwhelming in that match, and was sort of left behind by a couple of the big name fullbacks in that round. Of course, because of that down game from him, and he still looked a little bit slow or a little bit stuck with that adductor or groin injury, whatever it was, so I didn't play him in the round just gone, even though I really wanted to. And he had that massive score with a try and, 2 try assists. So that was, it just sort of passed the eye test for me that he looked to be over that sort of niggling injury. He's obviously getting close toward that origin sort of part of the season, and he'll want to be putting his hand up for that series once again. And he certainly reminded us of just how capable he is. And I think the Penrith team also reverted back to their structure of old, where you might remember early on in the season, they were doing that really odd sort of turning the center or the second rower under on the right-hand side with a really deep loopy pass from Cleary. And then they sort of set up to attack the left, and the ball wasn't really going right a lot. And that's really where Edwards thrives. He sweeps there behind the second rower and the center, and often has that 2-on-1 against the winger. And he's smart enough to make the decision there to either go himself and score or to draw and pass. And he did that twice for Paul Alamotti in that match just gone as well. So that's the Penrith of old that we know. And they really hadn't set up a play like that in the couple of games that Edwards had taken the field alongside Nathan Cleary. So it was nice to see. I think they're going to see how that does work, and then they're going to go back to what does work. And he's certainly going to be a big piece of what does work in their attack close to the line, on top of all of the run meters that he does, pushing 250 every week that he's fit.
Yeah, love it. So lock in Edwards, I'm pretty happy with that. The next player that I think, he was my lock of the week last week, and he probably just made enough points to sort of fill that role of lock of the week, and that's Ryan Pappenhausen. I still think he's a lock of the week this week, even if he doesn't have the kicking duties. Obviously, it would be, much better if he did, but he matches up against the Rabbitohs, who have allowed an average of 60 GDS points to fullbacks, which has them ranked first. So previously it was the Panthers just ahead of them. The Rabbitohs have taken over now, though, for allowing the most points to fullbacks. The lowest fullback score that they've had against them this season was 42 points from Dane Laurie. So even that there tells you something. I think Pappenhausen, much better player, much better opportunity. He just seems to, as we spoke about last week, he just seems to be in everything that the Storm does. He just pops up inside, outside. He's there or thereabouts whenever there's a try scored or a try assist that needs to be made. So I think they're going to have a big bounce back. They're going to want to prove to Bellamy that they're much better than what they were against the Finns, and I think Pappy will have a big part of that, and I'm pretty happy just to lock him in with Edwards and then with our man Teddy as well. Obviously, he had a little bit of a down game against the Panthers. However, he's got a massive opportunity against the Dragons. They're in some form themselves, though. The Dragons are playing really well. They're playing some really good footy, and it's a little bit scary to see what they can do to other teams as well, even though someone like Clint Gutherson hasn't had a big opportunity the last few weeks when we've looked to potentially play him. They still allow, though, the Dragons still allow plenty of points to fullbacks, averaging 59 points. So they're second just behind the Rabbitohs there in points allowed to fullbacks. So, Hopewade a couple of weeks, last week went massive against them, 75 points. I think we just locked Teddy in, put a line through last week. He was up against one of the, one of the best sides in the competition that we know in terms of the Panthers. I think we just lock him in and let Teddy cook and just go with those three players of Teddy, Pappy, and Edwards. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, spot on. With the Ryan Pappenhausen shout and the Melbourne Storm for that matter. Gee, poor bunnies. They've just coming off a big loss on Good Friday, couldn't score a point, and now they get the Storm after a big loss to the against the Dolphins. You know that Bellamy's going to have them up and ready to go, and the poor bunnies are going to feel the full brunt of that. Mate, just on Lehigh Hopowate's game last week against the Dragons, that really showed that they can be vulnerable to that fast sweeping winger that can break some tackles as well, and that's exactly what Teddy likes to do. Hopewade hadn't passed 50 in his 3 or 4 matches at fullback prior to that, but he had about 250 running meters, broke 9 tackles, and set up a try or two himself. So not really concerned about running Teddy out. He's going to get through his normal amount of work, and I think we've got some really safe plays in those fullbacks, but also plenty of upside as well. And mate, if Ryan Pappenhausen is kicking as well, we could see an 80 or a 90-point score here. I wouldn't be surprised.
Look, and it seems like we have done enough to twist Sif Kanga's arm on Teddy. I think previously he was looking at Gutho or Edwards, but he's going to run with the Teddy. Also, obviously, we've talked about 3 fullbacks. We are going to continue with that theme of 3 fullbacks in our side, with 1 on the field and then 2 in our backbench spots. So I know we talked earlier about the sort of makeup of our middles and our forwards and our edges when JT asked that question. But we're going to stick with the fullbacks, I think, for this. I think that's a much safer option with heaps of upside. I think the fullbacks, obviously, they're the highest scoring position in Game Day squad. Fullbacks average 43.5 points across every fullback that has run onto the field, whereas every other position scoring between 30 and 36, 37 on average. So the fullbacks definitely a big opportunity there for them to score big. And just before we move on and finish with our teams, Jay Boney's jumped in again and he's asking, is Latrell a must-have? Latrell's obviously moved back to fullback after the, I wouldn't say failed attempt at half, but he just did not look up to speed. They swapped him and Jack Whiten out for some of the game and had Latrell at centre. They've put him back in at fullback. Is he a potential play this week, or is he probably someone you just hold and wait for a couple of weeks?
Yeah, no, not a must-have by any means, Jay Boney. Not even really a contention to play for me this week, particularly with the matchup there against the Storm. He's obviously played a lot of sort of centre and 5'8" so far this season, so he hasn't really had to have that full 80-minute game at fullback where there's obviously a lot more running and decision-making to do, and coming up against the Storm, who are just coming off an absolute flogging. It's not a great matchup at all. He's obviously capable. He's beaten up against some really good teams and scored some massive points in the past, but look, I can't see it happening this week. And with so many other great fullback options, Latrell's not on my radar, but it'll be nice to see him get that full 80 minutes under his belt. Hopefully he does play well and come back next week, mate, and we'll have a chat about Latrell then.
And just quickly, JT, who is also known as the Kiwi Stats Man, he has chimed in here with the Bunnies have never won in Melbourne. I'm not even going to check that. I just trust JT that much that I can agree. And the only way that I feel like Latrell's going to score well is if the Bunnies win. And obviously that doesn't look like it's going to happen. So Jay Boney, I think drop Latrell and look for someone like Teddy, Drinkwater, Pappy, or Edwards, I think is the better option. All right, let's have a look at our starter squad. So remember, this is the all-bronze starter squad. Stewie, unfortunately, was eliminated round 1 of the GDS Cup, but I am still there and I am up against Do Better Next Year. I don't know whether that's a message to their opponents or a message to themselves. Whoever they are, they're in my head already. I'm very nervous with that name there. hopefully I get up there with my team. A couple of differences there in the best, Cook and Dylan Lucas, but obviously we talk about each and every week. You've got to be pretty flexible. You've got to be on top of the late mail and be pretty loose in terms of who you're going to play and where you can pivot to. So there are definitely some options there as well.
Yeah, I don't think my team's ever exactly identical to what we show on screen. And it's not to mislead anyone, but there's the rugby league scene can change so much in 24 hours. So we're putting these teams together on sort of a Wednesday morning, and there's obviously a lot of news that we sort of read into and sort of make some changes on the fly as well. So it's a pretty good overview, but we typically are pretty flexible and make some changes where we can.
And just on that as well, make sure you jump over to the Game Day Squad Discord. We do our best to try and post teams an hour before, once we know them, just so that you're up to date with all of those changes as well. Obviously, the last couple of weeks we have been on holidays, which we've been a bit slack, but we are back now. So we'll make sure we get on top of that as often as we can to help everyone out in the Discord community. So make sure that you jump in. Look, we have across to our Bro Down Showdown. It is our favorite part of the week, and it's something that we loved throughout the cricket season. In the Big Bash. So if you watched any of those shows there, you'll know exactly how this works. Stu and I go head to head. We pick 3 players from 3 different positions that are spun on the wheel, and then we go head to head. Either the winner gets up 3-0 or 2-1. This week is something we've never had, or last week I should say, something we've never had before, in Jaden Campbell being ruled out and David Fafita being ruled out. So we automatically got 1 point each, and then it was down to Fletcher Sharp and Jacob Kiraz. And this week, I finally got another win on the board. So I think it's about 6-2 now in favour of Stu. What that means, though, is that we are going to spin the wheel for everyone that commented on commented my name in the YouTube, the Facebook comments. That means that you are now in the running to win one of those cards. So let's bring the wheel up. I will kick you there. So you should be able to see the wheel there, mate. That's right.
Yep. Gotcha.
Perfect. The concerning thing is one YouTube user, their name was just simply Dot. So I don't know how they're going to prove that it's them, but let's spin the wheel and see how we go. So these people commented Dill to be the winner of Bro Down Showdown. Go on, get to Dot. Oh, I love it. Alrighty, and it is Gainers AFL. So we've got an AFL fan jumping over and getting a NRL pack. So I'm going to stop sharing there. And Stu, you bring up your screen now, mate, so we can see those cards.
All right. Have you got it?
Not yet. Hang on. Here we go. Let's bring that up on screen. Sensational. Alrighty. So the way this works is I am going to pick one card there that's going to go to Gainers AFL, and I'm going to go straight down the middle. Gainers, you are going to get whatever this card is, and it is. Oh, look, Junior.
Mate, we're trying to get the AFL guys involved in the game, and you're going to give him a gold.
All right, scratch that. We're going to go and give Gainers AFL the left card there on screen. Left card here. All right, that is a Corey.
You're not helping yourself.
Naira. Come on, we've got to have a good card. Look, let's go to the last one. Gainers, what is this one? It's got to be good. This is for you, mate. No, it is Blake Laurie. That is horrible. I apologise. Gainers, get in touch with me. Quasi over on the Discord. I will find a better card, a better gold card than that. I will help you out, brother. Congratulations. Thank you for commenting my name and having some faith in me that I could get one back. Alrighty, this week, our Bro Down Showdown, we spun the wheel and we got hooker, edge, and fullback. So I am going to run with Cook. Dylan Lucas, I know it's a bit of a risk, but I'm going to run with it, stick with my guns, and then I'm also going to run with Ryan Pappenhausen. So if you think those 3 players are going to get up over Stu, make sure you comment Dill. If you think Robson, Couchman, and Teddy are going to take the win for Stewie, make sure you comment Stu. Either on the YouTube or over on Facebook. And at the end of the week, into next week when we run our next show, you might be fortunate or unfortunate like Gainers and be in a chance to win a card. No, we'll always make sure you get something decent. We wouldn't give you any rubbish that you cannot play. So like I said, Gainers, hit us up. We will sort you out. So remember, comment Dill or Stu, whichever one you think is going to get up in the Bro Down Showdown. All right, that is it. That is our around 8 live show. We have talked through all our starts and sits. We have gone through our starter squads, and we've also done our Bro Down Showdown, which we love. Our next show is coming to you in 1 week's time, Wednesday, the 30th of April. That is round 9. That is also Magic Round. So we're going to have a big show there talking about all of the competition happening at Suncorp Stadium. Already coming through is a few names for Stu. Straight up, we've got Michael Cozzy's posse in there with Stu. Skip's also going with Stu there. And then Jay Boney, just to jump in as well, is also going Stu. Everyone is on the Stu train this week. All right, we did also tease earlier in the show. We had a bit of an announcement for Anzac Day. Stu and I are doing something a little bit special. We are having a Fantasy Bros meetup, a watch along over at the Story Bridge Hotel in Brisbane for Anzac Day. So that is this Friday. It is a public holiday. Story Bridge are famous for their Anzac Day celebrations. So if you want to come down, hang out with the Fantasy Bros, maybe play some 2-up on the side and watch a bit of footy. Maybe watch me cry watching the Warriors lose. I don't know. But yeah, come on down to the Storybridge Hotel. We are in no way affiliated with the Storybridge Hotel as well. That's just where we've chosen because we love the atmosphere there. Join us, and we may have a few packs and a few codes to give away as well. We'll see how we go. We'll see if we can help you out. Mate, anything else to leave the viewers and the listeners before we head off for?
No, sounds great, mate. Weekend? Looking forward to it. Love Anzac Day. Such a great round with a lot of tradition, and sort of love that. Listening to that last post, hey, it really gets you pumped up. And we got 3 games on the Friday. How good?
Yeah. And there's nothing like listening to a New Zealand national anthem, which just quietly is one of the best anthems going around, whether you are from New Zealand or not. Alrighty, thanks, mate. Thank you, viewers and listeners. Don't forget, if you are new to Game Day Squad, jump on, download the app, sign up now, use the promo code FBRL25. Follow all of our socials at Fantasy Bros AU. That is YouTube. That is Instagram and TikTok. We will have our lock and pod of the week, hopefully up tomorrow or at least Friday. And for everyone that is looking forward to Anzac Day, we hope we see you down at the Story Bridge. Thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Have a good one, Stu. Have a good one,
Thanks,
listeners.